The building was almost empty when the billionaire stayed late that night. The city outside still moved fast, full of lights and noise, but inside the tall glass tower, everything felt slow and quiet. She liked these hours. There were no meetings, no forced smiles, no people trying to impress her. Just silence, work, and clear thinking. She stood near the wide window of her top-floor office, holding a tablet, reviewing numbers that could change the future of her company. The business had been built from nothing, step by step, through long nights like this. She trusted logic, discipline, and hard work. People often said she was cold, but in truth, she simply believed results mattered more than words. Down the hallway, the soft sound of a cleaning cart rolled across the floor. A janitor moved slowly, careful not to disturb anything. He wiped glass walls, picked up small pieces of paper, and straightened chairs that no one would sit in until morning. He had worked in this building for months, yet almost no one knew his face. People walked past him every day without a glance. He was a single father, though no one at work knew that either. Every night before his shift, he checked his child's homework, packed food for the next day, and promised he would be home before sunrise. His life was built on routines. Wake up early, take care of his child, sleep a little, then work again. It was tiring, but quitting was never an option. As he cleaned, his eyes stayed sharp. He noticed things others missed. Small cracks in tiles, loose wires, doors that did not close right. He fixed what he could quietly. He did not want attention. Attention brought questions, and questions could complicate a life he was trying hard to keep simple. The billionaire returned to her desk, then paused. Something had caught her eye through the glass wall of her office. The janitor had stopped near a locked conference room. Instead of moving on, he knelt down and looked closely at a panel near the floor. He pulled a small tool from his pocket and began working on it with calm focus. She frowned. Janitors were not supposed to touch technical systems. Security was strict in this building. Her first thought was that he might be doing something wrong. She walked closer to the glass, watching carefully. He did not look nervous. His hands moved with confidence, not fear. Minutes passed. He tested the panel, stood up, and gently closed it. The lights in the conference room flickered once, then stayed steady. He stepped back, checked the room, and nodded to himself before pushing his cart forward. The billionaire felt a strange pull of curiosity. That panel had caused problems for weeks. Experts had come and gone, charging large fees and offering excuses. Yet this janitor had fixed it in silence, without asking for anything. She did not call out to him. Instead, she returned to her desk, though her focus was gone. Her mind replayed what she had seen. People were usually exactly what their job titles said they were. This man did not fit that rule. The next day, the building filled again with noise and movement. Meetings, coffee cups, raised voices. The billionaire moved through her schedule with her usual sharp attention, but her eyes searched the hallways more than usual. She noticed the janitor again, cleaning near the elevators. He kept his head down, moving efficiently. An executive complained loudly about a printer not working. Before anyone could call support, the janitor stepped forward, unplugged it, checked the tray, and fixed the issue in seconds. The executive barely said thank you before walking away. The billionaire saw everything. She began to test a quiet theory. She asked for reports on maintenance issues. She noticed how many were resolved without official records. Too many. Someone was solving problems before they reached management. And the timing often matched the janitor's shifts. Late one evening, she stayed again. This time, she did not work. She watched. The janitor moved through the building like someone who understood it deeply. He listened to the hum of machines, adjusted things by instinct, and cleaned as if the place mattered to him. When he took breaks, he sat alone, reading notes on his phone. Not messages. Notes. She felt a quiet respect growing, mixed with confusion. That same night, after his shift, the janitor went home to a small apartment. He unlocked the door softly, careful not to wake his child. He checked the room, smiled when he saw school books neatly stacked, and sat at the table to count his money. It was never much, but he made it work. He remembered another life, one filled with plans, skills, and respect. That life felt far away now. He did not dwell on it. The past could not feed a child. Back at the office tower, the billionaire stood alone in the elevator, thinking. She had built her empire by noticing details others ignored. This felt like one of those moments. A small crack in the surface hiding something bigger underneath. She decided she would speak to him soon. Not as a boss, not with power, but with curiosity. She wanted to understand how a man like that ended up pushing a cleaning cart through one of the most expensive buildings in the city. But she did not know yet that the truth would challenge everything she believed about success, failure, and the cost of being invisible. That truth was already walking the halls every night, unnoticed by most, carrying both responsibility and regret, waiting for the moment when his quiet actions would no longer stay hidden. The billionaire began to notice patterns after that night. She had trained herself to see patterns in numbers, markets, and people. This one stood out. Problems appeared on reports, then quietly disappeared before morning. Lights that once failed stayed steady. Doors that jammed opened smoothly. No emails were sent. No credit was taken. It was as if the building itself was healing overnight. She started staying later, pretending to work while her attention followed the soft sound of wheels and footsteps in the hall. The janitor moved with the same calm rhythm every night. He never rushed, never wasted time. He greeted security guards with a nod and kept going. He did not linger, but he did not hide either. One evening, a sudden alarm rang out on a lower floor. It was brief, sharp, and wrong. The billionaire stiffened. Alarms in this building were no joke. She reached for her phone to call security, but before she could, she saw the janitor already moving fast. Not panicked, but focused. She followed at a distance. The alarm came from a storage area near the server rooms. A faint smell of heat filled the air. The janitor opened a panel, shut off a small switch, and waited. The alarm stopped. He wiped his hands, checked the room once more, and only then noticed her standing there. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Up close, she saw his face clearly for the first time. Tired lines, steady eyes, no fear. He straightened slowly, respectful but not nervous. "I'll report it," he said calmly, already reaching for his cart. She surprised herself by speaking before he could leave. "How did you know what to do?" He paused. The question hung between them, quiet and heavy. "I've seen things like that before," he said carefully. "Seen them where?" she asked. He hesitated just long enough to be noticed, then answered, "Other places." She studied him. He was choosing his words, not lying exactly, but not opening the door either. She recognized that skill. Many people used it around her, but usually from fear or ambition. With him, it felt different, protective. She nodded and stepped aside, letting him pass. He pushed his cart forward and disappeared down the hallway. That night, she could not focus on work. His calm under pressure bothered her. Most people froze when alarms sounded. He had moved like it was routine. The next day, she asked human resources for a simple file. Nothing suspicious, just employment history. What she received surprised her. The janitor had listed incomplete education, short-term jobs, and a long gap that had no explanation. No references worth noting. On paper, he was invisible, the kind of person systems ignored. She leaned back in her chair. Invisible people often carried the heaviest stories. That evening, the janitor finished his shift and went home earlier than usual. His child had a school event. He cleaned up, changed his shirt, and stood in the mirror for a moment, practicing a smile that hid exhaustion. He had learned to leave work behind at the door. At the school, he sat in a small chair meant for children, clapping louder than anyone else. His child scanned the room until their eyes met. That smile made every long night worth it. Afterward, they walked home together. He listened carefully to stories about class, about friends, about dreams that were still pure and untouched. He answered questions gently, never letting his own worries spill out. Later that night, after his child slept, he sat alone at the table again. Bills, notes, plans. He kept a small notebook hidden in a drawer. Inside were ideas, designs, solutions, things he no longer shared with the world. He closed it and locked the drawer. Back at the tower, the billionaire watched the city lights and thought about that notebook she imagined him carrying in his head. She had met many talented people. Most advertised it loudly. The dangerous ones stayed quiet. Days passed. Then something unexpected happened. An important investor tour was scheduled. The building needed to be flawless. Every system had to work perfectly. Stress filled the air. Staff rushed. Voices rose. Mistakes multiplied. During the tour, a key presentation room suddenly lost connection. Screens went dark. The room froze. Executives panicked quietly. Before anyone could react, the janitor stepped in. He unplugged a cable, reset a sequence, and restored everything in under a minute. He did it without looking at the audience, without waiting for permission. The investors barely noticed. The executives did. The billionaire stood at the back, watching closely. This was no accident. This was skill sharpened by experience. After the tour, she asked security to bring the janitor to her office. Not as an order, as a request. When he arrived, he stood near the door, hands relaxed at his sides. He had faced pressure before, far worse than this. Still, he stayed cautious. She offered him a seat. He declined politely. "You don't have to stand," she said. "I'm fine," he replied. She smiled faintly. "You've been fixing problems that aren't in your job description." He met her eyes. "I don't like seeing things break when I know how to stop it." "Why hide it?" she asked. He took a breath. "Because when people see too much, they ask questions. And sometimes those questions cost more than they give." She felt that answer settle deep. She did not push further. Instead, she said, "I believe people should be seen for what they can do, not what they wear." He nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. As he left, she knew this was only the beginning. She had caught him in the act, yes, but not of wrongdoing, of quiet excellence. And she sensed that whatever he was protecting, whatever past he carried, was about to surface whether he wanted it to or not. Outside, night fell again. The janitor pushed his cart through the halls, unaware that his invisible life was starting to change, step by careful step. After that meeting, nothing was said out loud, but everything felt different. The billionaire did not change his schedule or his title. He still wore the same uniform, still pushed the same cart. Yet her eyes followed his work with new focus. She watched how others treated him, how easily they overlooked him, and how often they depended on the quiet results he left behind. She decided to learn without forcing the truth. Pressure closed doors. Patience opened them. One evening, she walked the lower floors instead of taking the elevator straight down. It was rare for her to do that. People noticed. Conversations stopped. She nodded and kept moving until she saw him near a supply room, sorting tools with care. "Do you mind if I walk with you?" she asked. He looked surprised but nodded. "If you don't mind the mess." They walked side by side for a while. The silence was not uncomfortable. Felt honest. "You have a child," she said gently. He stopped for a second, then continued walking. "Yes." "How old?" "Still young enough to believe I can fix anything." She smiled. "That's a good age." He did not smile back, but his shoulders eased. They spoke about small things. School schedules, long nights, the cost of groceries. Nothing deep, yet everything mattered. She listened more than she spoke. That was not her habit. At the end of the hall, he stopped. "This is where I turn back." "Thank you for the walk," she said. He nodded and returned to work. That night, she thought about how easily life could narrow a person's world. One bad turn, one moment of responsibility, one promise that mattered more than ambition. A few days later, the janitor received a call during his break. The school nurse. His child had fainted. He did not panic, but his hands shook as he grabbed his jacket and left early. No questions asked. No permission needed. At the clinic, he sat beside the bed, holding a small hand and listening to the steady sound of breathing. The doctor said it was exhaustion and stress. Nothing serious, but it was a warning. That night he barely slept. The next evening, he returned to work with heavier steps. He was more careful than usual, slower, distracted. The billionaire noticed immediately. She asked security to cover his floor for an hour and invited him to her office again. This time, he accepted the chair. "You look tired," she said. He did not argue. "Life doesn't pause." She nodded. "Tell me about the gap in your work history." He stared at the floor for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady but low. "I used to work in places where mistakes mattered a lot," he said. "Places where people trusted me to keep things running. I was good at it. What happened? I trusted the wrong people. And then someone depended on me more than any job ever could." She understood without details. "I'm not asking you to explain everything," she said. "But I want you to know something. Skills don't disappear just because life gets heavy." He looked up at her. There was pain there but also pride. "Sometimes," he said, "skills are all you have left." The company faced another challenge soon after. A system upgrade failed overnight. The morning team panicked. Meetings were called. Voices rose. The janitor had already fixed half the issue before dawn. This time, people noticed. Executives whispered. Questions formed. Eyes followed him when he passed. The billionaire ended the chaos with one sentence. "Give him space." Later, she thanked him privately. "I don't want a promotion," he said before she could offer anything. "I just want stability." She respected that honesty more than ambition. That weekend, she visited a community center quietly, without announcements. She watched parents juggle work and children, dreams and survival. She saw him there, helping with repairs, teaching kids how things worked, laughing softly. He froze when he saw her. "You don't stop working," she said. He shrugged. "Someone has to." She watched how children gathered around him, how trust came naturally. Leadership without a title. On the way home, she realized the truth she had been avoiding. She did not just see talent. She saw character. Monday morning, she asked him one last question. "If I asked you to step forward," she said, "would you?" He thought of his child, of promises, of risk. "Yes," he said quietly, "but only if I can still go home at night knowing I did the right thing." She nodded. "That's exactly why I'm asking." Outside, the building stood tall as ever. Inside, a quiet shift was taking place. Not a change of power, but a change of understanding. The man who cleaned the floors was no longer invisible. And the woman who built an empire was learning that some of the strongest foundations were never meant to be seen at all. The week after their conversation, the building faced its biggest challenge yet. A major system error spread silently, affecting security, communications, and critical data. Panic began to build among executives who were responsible for keeping the company's reputation intact. Phones rang endlessly. Emails flooded inboxes. Meetings were called and voices raised. Yet the janitor, as always, moved quietly through the hallways, focused and unbothered by the chaos. The billionaire watched from her office, her heart heavy with anticipation. She had seen him fix small problems before, but this was the first time a crisis of this scale had hit the building during his shift. She knew he could handle it, but she also knew this moment could reveal everything he had been hiding for years. He arrived at the affected server room with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. Every step he took was precise. He checked cables, circuits, and connections with practiced eyes. His hands moved quickly but carefully, adjusting settings and rebooting systems. Executives tried to follow, but he barely acknowledged them, focused only on the task at hand. The building seemed to hold its breath. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a short span of time. Then, one by one, the alarms stopped. Screens flickered back to life. Doors that had jammed now moved smoothly. Systems that had failed were now operational again. The chaos was gone as silently as it had come. The executives stared in disbelief. The janitor wiped his hands, stood upright, and quietly returned to his cart. The billionaire stood from her office chair, her eyes wide. She had never seen someone so capable, so composed under pressure, without any title, without recognition, without expectation. The janitor had just saved not only the building but potentially millions of dollars of investments and contracts. He had done it all silently, as if it were nothing. She called him into her office immediately after. He entered quietly, with the same careful posture that had become familiar to her over the weeks. "You just handled what our entire IT team couldn't," she said, her voice steady but amazed. He looked down briefly, then back at her. "I've done this before. It's not different from any other problem I've solved." "You've done this before?" she asked, leaning forward. "Yes," he said. "Other places, other times. People depended on me. I kept things running, and when I couldn't, things broke." The billionaire felt the weight of those words. She had assumed the man was only a janitor. Now she realized that his title had never reflected his abilities. Every small task he performed, every problem he fixed quietly, was the result of years of experience, skill, and responsibility. He was more than anyone in the building knew. "Why did you take this job?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Life didn't give me a choice. Responsibilities, family, survival. Sometimes we work with what we have, not what we want." She nodded, understanding in a way she had rarely felt. Power, wealth, and title could not buy what he had. Resilience, integrity, and a mind trained under real-world pressure. The executives outside the office whispered nervously. They had realized the truth but were unsure how to approach it. Some were afraid of questioning him directly, others felt embarrassed for overlooking him for so long. The billionaire finally spoke again. "I want you to know something. Your work does not go unnoticed. I've been watching, and I believe you deserve more than this job." He shook his head slightly. "I'm not looking for more. I just want to keep things steady. Home, work, and the promise I made to my child." Her eyes softened. She understood completely. Ambition was different for everyone. For him, stability and integrity mattered more than status or money. "Then I'll make a deal," she said. "Not for money, not for promotion, but so you can work without hiding. So your abilities are seen when needed, but your life remains your own." He studied her, curious but cautious. "There will be challenges ahead," she continued. "Projects, emergencies, decisions that require judgment. You'll have a voice, a place where it matters. But nothing will force you away from your home or your child. Are you willing to try?" He took a deep breath. "Yes," he said quietly. "If it means doing the right thing, I'll try." The billionaire nodded, a faint smile breaking her usual composed expression. She knew this decision would change the building forever. It would change him forever as well. Over the next few weeks, the janitor's role quietly evolved. He remained in the same uniform, pushing the same cart, moving through the hallways with calm diligence. Yet now, his work carried authority. Staff sought his input on technical problems. Executives respected his knowledge. Security relied on his judgment in unexpected situations. And he handled it all with the same humility he always had. At home, he continued to care for his child, balancing responsibilities as he always had. But now there was a sense of recognition, of fairness. The life he had fought to protect quietly was no longer invisible. The billionaire, too, watched the changes with quiet satisfaction. She had built her empire through vision and discipline, but this moment reminded her of a truth often overlooked. Greatness often hides in the most unexpected places. Not in titles, not in appearances, but in the quiet, steady dedication of someone who refuses to give up despite the odds. One evening, she visited him at the building, though not as an employer or a superior. She simply walked the floors, observing him as he worked, and paused to offer a simple nod of respect. He returned it, understanding the gesture without words. Later, in the quiet of her office, she reflected on the lesson she had learned. Power could move mountains, but character could move people. And in this building, one man's character had quietly saved everything, proving that true value is measured not by recognition, but by action and integrity. The janitor, unaware of how much he had changed the perception of everyone around him, continued his nightly routines. But the foundation of his life had shifted. The building was no longer just a workplace. It was a place where his past, his skill, and his dedication were finally understood. And in that understanding, both he and the billionaire found a rare connection. A silent respect that transcended hierarchy, ambition, and expectation. From that night onward, the building operated differently. Problems were solved faster. Staff worked more confidently. And above all, there was an unspoken understanding that the man who cleaned the floors was more than he seemed. A quiet force that ensured the stability and success of everyone around him. And for the first time in years, he could take pride in what he did, knowing that he was finally seen, not just for what he appeared to be, but for who he truly was. After weeks of quiet adjustment, the building settled into a new rhythm. The janitor continued his work as before, but now with a subtle authority that had never been granted to him. Staff stopped seeing him as just a man in uniform. They began to notice the way he solved problems, the way he could fix situations that others would struggle with for days. The respect was unspoken but deeply felt. The billionaire watched these changes with quiet satisfaction. She had built her empire through careful observation and calculated decisions. But this lesson was different. This time, she had seen potential where no one else did. She had witnessed the quiet power of skill, character, and determination in someone who had been overlooked for years. And she knew that recognition did not need to come with titles or paychecks. Sometimes acknowledgement alone could change everything. One evening, an unexpected emergency shook the building. A major client visit was scheduled for the next day, and a critical system controlling the climate and security began malfunctioning. Panic spread among the staff as the company's reputation hung in the balance. Executives tried to intervene, but the system's complexity left them helpless. The janitor, as always, moved quietly toward the problem, assessing it with calm focus. He opened panels, checked connections, and methodically worked through each system. His hands moved with precision, guided by experience and intuition. The room filled with tension as others watched, unsure if he could fix the critical failure. But he worked as if nothing was impossible, as if he had done this countless times before. Minutes passed, stretching into what felt like hours for those watching. Then, slowly, the systems returned to normal. Lights steadied, air circulated correctly, and security alarms were silenced. The executives exchanged stunned looks. They had witnessed a man save the company in ways that went beyond his title. The billionaire simply observed quietly, her expression calm but her mind racing with admiration. After the crisis, she invited him into her office once again. He entered, as always, with careful steps and respectful composure. She gestured to a chair, and he declined politely. She did not push. "You handled that flawlessly," she said. "No one else could have done it so quickly." He shook his head. "It's what I do. I can't help it if it goes unnoticed." She leaned back, studying him. "You've done so much that no one noticed. But I see it now, and I want you to know that you matter. Not just to me, but to everyone here who benefits from your skills." He looked at her, eyes reflecting years of unspoken struggle. "I've spent a long time making sure things run smoothly without recognition. I don't need praise. Sometimes recognition isn't about praise," she said softly. "It's about truth. It's about seeing someone for who they really are." He nodded slowly, understanding her meaning. It was a quiet moment, but heavy with significance. For the first time, he felt that someone truly understood his life, his choices, and his dedication. The next day, the building hummed with renewed energy. Staff worked more confidently, knowing that their unseen problems were watched over by someone with unmatched skill. Executives were more respectful, often seeking his advice on minor issues before they escalated. And he continued to move through the building quietly, humble, consistent, and reliable. At home, life remained a delicate balance. He continued to care for his child, teaching lessons about perseverance, honesty, and responsibility. Even when tired, he showed that dedication and integrity were not just words but actions to live by. His child watched, learning by example that strength is often quiet, and courage is often unseen. Weeks later, the billionaire called a private meeting. She wanted to offer a more formal role, not to give him a title he did not desire, but to ensure his contributions were recognized appropriately. She knew he valued independence and stability, and she respected that. "I want you to have a voice where it matters," she said. "You don't need a title, but you deserve acknowledgement. Will you accept that?" He considered the offer carefully. He thought of his child, of promises made and kept, of the life he had rebuilt from mistakes and challenges. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, I will, if it allows me to do right by the people who depend on me and my family." The billionaire smiled. She understood completely. Recognition, in this case, was not about ego or status. It was about truth, fairness, and respect. Over time, the building became a testament to quiet excellence. People began to understand that greatness often hides where no one expects it. It is found in diligence, in care, in persistence, and in the choice to do the right thing even when no one is watching. The janitor, once invisible, became the silent backbone of the company's success. The billionaire and the janitor shared a mutual respect that transcended traditional roles. She had learned to see beyond appearances and titles. He had learned that acknowledgement could coexist with humility and responsibility. Together, they demonstrated that the world is shaped not just by those in power but by those who quietly ensure that the world keeps turning. One quiet evening, after the building had emptied and the city lights shimmered outside, she walked past him as he finished his rounds. She gave a subtle nod. He returned it. In that gesture was an unspoken understanding. Recognition did not need fanfare. Respect did not need ceremony. True value was measured in action, integrity, and the courage to keep going despite challenges. The janitor finally allowed himself a small smile as he locked the doors for the night. The building was secure, systems were running smoothly, and his child's future was protected. He knew that his work, though quiet, mattered. Not for titles, not for praise, but for the simple truth that he had kept his promises, safeguarded his responsibilities, and earned the respect of someone who truly understood him. The billionaire, watching from her office window, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had seen greatness in an unexpected place, and in recognizing it, she had changed more than one life. The lessons were clear. Sometimes the most powerful people are the quietest, and sometimes the most meaningful victories are the ones that go unnoticed by the world but are deeply felt by those who matter most. And so, the man who had once been invisible continued his work, balancing life, family, and responsibility with unmatched skill and humility. His story, though unassuming, became a quiet inspiration to those who noticed and a testament to the truth that greatness is often found where no one expects it.